Right, welcome back. If you're joining us right now, this is part of the ongoing conversation on police reform. Before we went on break, there were some questions that came from some of you. Let us sample some of them and get some answers as we proceed. And ladies and gentlemen, you can also call us. The phone lines will be on your screen and the SMS line as well as the WhatsApp number. Please reach out to us and let us know what you have to say. Linda, what are the questions?
The questions keep coming, interestingly. And of course, Frank had 6 of them. Like I said, we're going to touch on what it is that we can. The others will leave for another day. Are the police convicts who have breached police reforms, or are there? Yes. Why does police still breach Article 49 and Article 50? And what are your views on those innocent Kenyans who were wrongly convicted based on police evidence? Equally, what are your views on police torture, bribe, and obtaining money by false pretenses, as well as termination of cases? And are there mental assessment of officers who used guns? Say something about power of mercy and decongestment of prisons, as well as we ponder on that. There's a gentleman who says the corruption in those police stations is wanting, especially if they don't know who you are. I think those training schools they are trained in, or they're trained that civilians to be enemies. I think that's basically what he's saying, perhaps alluding to the fact that was presented by George. Equally goes ahead to say that's why you find during the previous deployment to Haiti, the civilians in X or on X were portraying hatred instead of praying for the police. Well, the police officer, but not all, will serve you either by the amount of money you have or your status. I think they're just saying that, well, mostly you have to toa kitu kidogo if you're going to get any form of service. And again, the IPOA and the NPSC should set aside offices for claims of mistreatment and mishandling by the police officers. Create awareness to the members of the public. We have the questions. Who picks what?
I think what Franklin was talking about basically is about the criminal justice system in Kenya. All those questions are tied down to that. And when it comes to issues of power of mercy, that one will leave to the executive. The judiciary has no role. Once somebody has been convicted, then it's only the president that can come and pardon you. As you saw what Trump did in America the other day. And these issues of somebody who has been wrongly convicted, there is recourse for that. Yeah, the moment the court overturns that conviction, then you can go ahead and file a civil suit against not the police alone. You file a suit against the government, which is represented by the Attorney General, and then the Inspector General of Police, probably that police commander that was involved, or that police officer that was involved in this. So all these are under the legal framework. So if you want deeper answers on this, somebody just has to understand there are several stakeholders involved in this. We have the executive, we have the judiciary, we have the office of the Director of Public Prosecution, and we have the office of the Attorney General, and lastly, the office of the Inspector General. So all these are the officers that are mandated to deal with such problems. And when you talk about corruption in the service, mistreatment of members of the public by the police, these are the ills that we are talking about that needs to be dealt with. And these reforms that we discussed earlier are geared towards achieving that. And I would say issues of community policing, we started community policing in 1992 when I was still in service. It did not work. We came up with Manyumba Kumi after the Westgate attack. Still, it did not work. So the big question here is, why is there a acrimony between members of the public and the police that it's becoming very difficult to breach that gap? And I believe you will look at a member of the public, you look at a policeman and say, this is not a person that is here to serve my interest. Equally, a police officer will look at you, instead of seeing Victor, that good civilian, he will try and see a criminal in you before now determining that you are innocent. You see? And this is why you will find that the public rarely wants to do anything we do with the police. Because one inch will tell you, if I go and report George today, because of corruption, George will be called and told, it is Victor who came and made a report against you. So you become a victim. Yes, we call this victimology. You become a victim of the criminal and equally a victim of the state. And so members of the public would not, if it's something I can deal with, watch a kai. You lose your phone, you go to the police station, a policeman will tell you, before you even book that OB, 50. It's an issue. Okay, once you've had the OB, it is pushed now to the investigating officer, and an investigating officer will tell you, I need such amount facilitation to track the phone. So members of the public will feel like this is not a service. These are people who are doing business with our problems. And this has been the problem why community policing failed. We have a directorate at Vigilance. Yeah, we have a director of community policing. But if you go to that office, nothing happens because the members of the public that you're supposed to engage are not interested in that. Yeah, we say we need manyumba kumi. It's not working. But you go to a country like Tanzania, Ethiopia, Uganda, we call it popular intelligence. Popular intelligence secures those countries. And that is what we lack in Kenya. And that is why we had Westgate, that is why we had Dusit too. That is why we had Garissa University attacks, because people don't share popular intelligence. And if we want to secure this country, there must be a good relation and working relation between members of the public and the police so that information can be shared. Without popular intelligence, we will not achieve much. So this issue, we have tried to treat it. But unfortunately, the Gen Z demonstrations took us 10 steps back. Because now, the relation between the police and the public is worse than it was before 25th of June, 2024. And politics into play. I mean, that is dangerous. We need to treat that.
Interesting. And
Tatiana, did you pick some questions and Mr. Lagat?
Okay. In addition to what he has said, there's a question by Frank regarding whether police officers who use their firearms normally undergo mental assessment. Yeah. If they have killed and an investigation is carried out, it is proven that that officer actually committed killing. If before any action is taken in a court of law, it is required that such an officer should undergo mental assessment. So they do. What I need also to add is that police officers also get traumatized in one way or another. They have mental issues. And sometimes, even as we investigate cases, we find that the actions committed by this officer are actually because that officer was a mental case and would easily refer such an officer for mental assessment just to find out on his mental fitness. On the issue of, was it on traffic management,
yes,
the issue of receiving bribes? You realize that this is corruption, and the entity that is meant to deal with corruption is actually the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission. So we do partner as IPOA with EACC to see how best we can address that issue of corruption within the service. On the GNC demonstrations, and it was a public management order issue, I think immediately thereafter, Parliament actually summoned the Cabinet Secretary, and thereafter recommended to the Cabinet Secretary to develop a policy on public order management, just to come and address the manner in which police officers will be handling protests going forward. One, the objective is to avert any deaths and serious injury. So once that one is put in a place, that would be okay. So I would call that a very, very important lesson that was learned through the GNZ demonstrations. So if that is done and done in the right manner, and it gives clear procedures on how to handle public protests, and it becomes an accountability mechanism so that any institution such as IPOA would want to know exactly what happened and would ask a police officer, can you account from A to Z, then that is possible. Because that was the missing link.
All right. Tatiana, I want to ask this question of you. It's been said a lot of the things we've said tonight and in a lot of those recommendations lie on, put responsibility on the side of the police. And then the policies and the leadership of the police, they need to be able to do this to bridge this gap. What can the common mwananchi do, in your opinion, to improve this situation? George is saying all attempts so far have not bridged that gap. The Nyumba Kumi thing has not worked. The community policing for over 30 years has not worked. What, in your opinion, can the public do to improve the situation?
First, educate, and educate yourself on what's happening within your surroundings, whether it's the legal implications of what you're planning to do or what you have done. Be aware of the laws that are tied to these issues, whether it's, he's actually reminded me of the public order management policy. That's very vital in regards to the recent past in the Gen Z protests. Other than that, look at the laws that are being brought up in Parliament before they're actually passed. Give your views. Those views are actually, maybe sometimes we are of the view that they're not hard, but at least you've done your part. You've done your civic obligation and you've actually given your views. Be your neighbor's keeper. If you see something happening and you know better than them, educate them or step up and speak out on the same. If you see an issue, for example, now, as I think we've learned so much from the Gen Z protests, and we note that the media or technology can work to your benefit. And there are so many people who do not utilize this to their benefit. So I'd say legal awareness, raise awareness on the issues that are arising from within your space, and be able, maybe someone out there already has so much information pertaining to the same, and they can be able to educate you on the same. It just takes like basically you vocalizing the issues, you understanding the material of the issues, so that when we talk about going for a protest and saying that I know my rights, I know Article 49, I know Article 50, nikishikwa, what's going to happen? If I'm taken to a jail, who do I call? How do I go about it? And this small changes and education, and it slowly builds up to now the mindset shift in regards to, okay, now that I know my part, I know what shouldn't be done to me, and I'm able to vocalize the same, not necessarily also use force on my part as a public citizen. But once I explain to you that I know what is going on here, even you come from a point of you need to understand as a police officer how I should be able to treat the situation. If I'm not well educated on the same, I need to go back, read, go through my training, evaluate where I went wrong so that I'm able to analyze and also address the situation appropriately.
There's some questions here, and I don't know whether we treat this as an allegation or who is supposed to police the police. So this gentleman says, hi, I'm Joel from Gatundu South, Mutomo village. Hapa, well, cannabis inauzwa sana, Mama Ngina University students, na police wanna control the business. And then another gentleman goes ahead to say, what mechanisms exist for citizens to report police misconduct without fear of retaliation? Goes ahead to ask again, how does the police force engage? And you know, it looks like Kenyans are finding it difficult to say police service. So there's a problem there. How does the police, let me say service, engage with communities to rebuild trust?
I want to pick that question, especially on the conduct of police officers. That group has said who are involved in bank activities and supporting that illegality, those are bad elements within the service and they ought to be removed. Then how do you then complain? The institutions that oversight the police is IPOA, and you can make a report to the Independent Policing Oversight Authority. We have the toll-free line, which is 1559. Just pick, call, and it will be received and make a complaint. We have other platforms. We have the email, we have the handles, we have the website. You can also call using the normal office lines, and your complaint will be recorded.
Okay.
Now, your complaint, depending on what you as a complainant want, can be treated as anonymous, or you can as well say, keep my records, and it will be addressed accordingly. The other question I didn't get, sorry.
I think it was largely about that. What mechanisms exist for citizens to report on police, and how does the police force engage with communities to rebuild trust? That's very important.
Actually, building trust is the key thing here. That there is low trust between members of the public and the police. First thing I would want to say is that not all police officers are bad. You go to a place and you find excellent officers who are performing their duty, even being praised by citizens. Previously, before we lacked funding, we had something called the Outstanding Police Service Award.
Oh yes, the award scheme.
If you can remember.
It's not there anymore?
It's not there because of lack of funding, but the authority is pursuing.
How much do you need to do that?
You ask us if you're going to give.
We need to know. We need to know.
It's important, yes.
How much do we can lobby? Tatiana
You
says,
know?
educate. We can use some of this information to lobby. How much do you need for that police award scheme to come back this year, 2025, to improve morale and to get people feeling proud of the crown?
Yeah, thank you. I think by then the budget was going to around 50 million.
50 million?
Yes.
I'm sure the policy guys who are watching us, they watch this station. It's the home of untold stories. We are telling this now. Please, 50 million is not a lot of money. And then we're paying enough taxes. Please bring back that scheme. Please proceed.
Yeah, actually it was an excellent thing that would reward the police officers who are performers. And it would be a motivating thing for all the other police officers. And the other thing also is the issue that affects the service is actually remuneration. I know the government is addressing that issue, but it needs to be made a little bit better. Another thing is on training, constant training, refresher, and reminding officers that they are serving a people. In every country where police services are, once the police officers do a perfect job, it has a ripple effect on the economy of the country.
All right.
Because once corruption is out, things will get better.
All right. Now, we're heading into the home stretch of this conversation. There are some questions that have come here. I think I'll throw one at George and Tatiana, and then I'll ask one last question to all of you to answer in your own way. But there's a gentleman here called Nicholas Chobong. He's asking, and George, you can take this. If the protesters loot or destroy property, this is from YouTube. He's asking, if the protesters loot or destroy property, how should the police respond? He also further asks, if stoned or beaten, how should they respond?
We have what we call the Riot Act, and it spells out all this. And when people are legally assembled, they are allowed to picket, they are allowed to demonstrate. But it reaches a point when a peaceful gathering turns into a riotous mob. A peaceful crowd turns into a riotous mob. Several interventions. They start destroying property, they start beating people, looting, etc., etc. Now they have become rioters. This is now a mob, not a peaceful crowd. And the law is clear. One, an inspector of police or a district officer or any person above the rank of an inspector should proclaim that gathering as illegal. If that proclamation is not there, any disbursement becomes also illegal.
Illegal, okay.
So once he has declared that illegal, you are hereby told to disperse peacefully.
And how is it declared? Verbally, right there and then?
A megaphone. Yeah. So these police should be carrying megaphones. They were provided for during our days.
Okay.
So you'll find an inspector with that thing here. So he wants to declare this mandamano illegal. There's a proclamation in the law, the judge's rules, that he's supposed to read, declaring that gathering illegal. And there are several interventions. Number one, you can just do what we call a charge. You have your officers, you tell them, okay, charge towards this crowd. That charging alone might disperse the crowd.
Okay.
If they don't, we have what we call the baton charge. Now you can use your batons. And when you're using these batons, you don't hit the head. We were trained to hit the elbow,
Okay.
the stomach, and the knees, just to disable you, not to break your bones, etc., etc. People will see this and people will disperse. If that is not working, then tear gas. And this tear gas is controlled, not what I see in town, everybody coming with a tear gas canister.
What's a kind of...
Anyhowly, because when you are having that riot party, all these members are numbered. Baton party, number 1, baton man, number 2, baton man, number 9. We have tear gas man, number 1, number 2, number 3. So that order should come from the person in charge of the party and saying, number 2 tear gas man, loop your tear gas. So that when IPOA comes to investigate, the order came from the commander. If that is not enough, we have gas guns. These ones should also be used on command by the platoon commander so that he can be held accountable.
Okay.
If now you feel this is too much heat, we need to use live rounds. We have 2 riflemen, rifleman number 1, rifleman number 2.
Okay.
And the commander knows that each of you has 20 rounds of live ammunition. And he will also give orders and say, rifleman number 1, and he'll give you direction at the knee. That person, mwenye nywele mrefu, glasses na mandevu, blue tie with stripes,
Okay.
seems to be the ringleader of this group. So as it moves, yeah, we have different orders. At some point, you are allowed to use volley fire. Volley fire is hit, move, hit, withdraw, hit, withdraw. And that is controlled and commanded by a person responsible. So that if he was told you've killed 10 people, why? He will have to explain, take personal responsibility. So we don't say that when people have become rioters and damaging property, force should not be used, but force should be consummate with the kind of damage that is happening. But right now, if you ask, you'll find nowadays a platoon that is 32 police officers will have only 2 riflemen. Only 2. But if you look at what is happening now, all police officers carry firearms, which is illegal.
Interesting.
You get?
Interesting indeed.
So that is, we call it a riot drill, and it's practiced every day. Now, another challenge is the cocktail of officers that we have on the streets. We have people from the administration police, their training is different. We bring in prison officers, you bring in the GSU, all these people come from different units. And you will find that during those years, it's only the GSU that were trained on riot drills. So when things become elephant, you remove these regular policemen and tell the GSU, now you take over. That is your specialty.
Okay.
Now it's not happening. And that is why holding somebody accountable, responsible for what happened the other last year is not going to be easy.
Okay.
So force is allowed, but gauged, not just using live rounds, no, on the crowd, because at some point somebody should be held responsible. And that is why the commanders during Baby Pendo's case were called out and they're supposed to be arraigned in court.
Right.
There's a lot to learn.
Quite. Yes, please.
Thank you.
As we wind up.
To add something on what he has said, especially with regard to the use of force. The law grants police officers to use force to achieve their objective. But that force must be commensurate with what they intend to achieve. The reason why that has been provided is to ensure that it is done within the law. Somebody called Nicholas, asked the question, that's Nicholas Chobong, with regard to that. If people are so armed, either they're throwing stones, then it calls for an officer at that time to consider using force. Now to think, do I use a firearm? Do I use a tear gas canister? Do I use a baton or any other equipment that is issued to him or her to use at that particular time? So if the objective to be achieved, if somebody is, let's say, armed with a firearm, then if that person is shot at that time, then it would be okay when you come and look at the proportionality and the necessity of use of force at that time. So even as we investigate as an authority, we normally look at how that force was used by an officer. Was it excessive or was it legal at that time, depending on the circumstances? So the use of force is very critical whenever you are trying to investigate a matter where force was used, resulting either in the death of a person or the injury of a person, or even common assault. And then another thing with regard to that is that probably those procedures is brought on management, the riot drill, the public order management, perhaps they have been forgotten. And that is where it becomes negligence on the part of the commander at that level, that you knew very well. It is provided, even under the current serving standing orders, very clear on the procedure of managing riots. But if it is not followed, the whole thing ends up like it was mismanaged. So who bears the responsibility? It is that commander at that level.
All right. Thank you for making that clear. Right, do you have anything
My
else?
goodness, I don't even know whether I would be able to, but let's just read them out because it's important.
Okay.
Gentleman goes ahead to ask about the clarity on this issue of masked police officers in demonstration, because I think there is no coming back from this. One day Kenya will become like, God forbid. Of course, we do not want to encourage that, but we're always reminded that we need to be on alert. Today we just read a story about DRC.
Absolutely.
So that's what he says. If we're not careful, then we find ourselves in that situation. And then there is Reverend Ken Daudi Kibe, who says, unfortunately, it is like the government is not ready to end corruption in the police service. I am worried he says, I am worried. I'm worried it has almost become the order of the day, the traffic police to make money that is bribed from drivers. The last time I engaged one of them and asked why they do this, and this is what they said: Pastor, if I don't, as per the expectations of my boss, I will be shown the door. Which then means, in most cases, corruption starts with the senior officers, then down to the juniors. He goes ahead to say again, around where I stay, insecurity is on the rampant, with young men selling bangi and other hard drugs, while the police station is just a stone throw away. We also see officers roaming around those drug dens, meaning some of them actually collaborate with these vendors in their illegal businesses. Something has to be done in the police force service. I say force because then everybody else is writing force, so I don't know.
All right.
It's supposed to be a service. Are police supposed to act as debt collectors on behalf of citizens? Someone owes the other. When not able to pay back, the police picks them up, keeps them in a police station until money is solicited from friends and relatives and then released. My goodness, there's another long one, but asanteni sana for the immense feedback. These concerns are so valid. And
absolutely. I think this is a subject that clearly requires a little bit more time. We like to say this on this show, that sometimes the conversation we have is bigger than the time that we have.
Right.
But we're glad that the three of you made time to come and share your insights with us, and we appreciate you. I want to give them one opportunity. If you had to say one thing, just one thing to the public, let's start with you, Tatiana. Just one thing to the public. The camera is right behind me, over my shoulder. Speak directly to the people. One thing each, then to you, Mr. Lagat, and Mr. Musamali.
And likely on the vision of a police service that is reformed in the country.
All right.
I'd say that the issues concerning police brutality and forced disappearances, amongst other things, do contradict the credibility of the national police being a service. And that's why you're hearing people referring to it as a force, because they've not seen the implication of it being a service. So once we achieve that change, we will be able to do wonders.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Short and sweet. I like that. Mr. Lagat, your camera is right there.
Yeah, thank you, Victor. What I will tell my Kenyan citizens, my good people, is that police reforms agenda is not for one particular person. It belongs to all of us. And once we have a reformed service, it means we have a better life. So let's protect together and ensure that our National Police Service is reformed. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lagat. And Mr. Musamali, camera right here, please.
Yeah, to the members of the public, look at the police as your brothers, your sisters, and everybody. Let us have that customer-client relationship between the police and the members of the public. Remember, for us to be safe, there must be a very good working relationship between the police and the law enforcers and members of the public, because you members of the public hold crucial information that will assist the police in fighting crime within our country. So let us bridge this gap between members of the public and the police. Let the police look at the members of the public and their clients, and let members of the public look at the police as their customers. That will help us solve a lot of criminal problems within this country. It will help us solve a lot of crime in the country, and it will make us safer.
All right. Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, you have been listening to Mr. George Musamali, who's a security expert. Thank you so much for coming. You've also been listening to Madam Tatiana Njenga from the Kenya National Human Rights Commission. Karibu sana and thank you. And last but not least, you've also been listening to Mr. Lagat from IPOA, the Independent Policing and Oversight Authority. Thank you so much for coming. And of course, my name is Victor Muyakane. I wish you a good night full of God's blessings. Over to you, Linda.
And of course, as they would always say, no retreat, no surrender. I know we continue to complain. I know we continue to say that perhaps the reforms are not doing much, but we do not relent. We must always continue until we get it right. Ladies and gentlemen, asanteni sana for the immense feedback as well. We look forward to see you again next Tuesday. Do have yourself a lovely night. My name is Linda Alela. Bye-bye.
Good night.
Good night. Okay.